there we go. Hello, everybody. Give everybody just a little more time to make their way over to the classroom, and then we'll get started. Hmm. All right, well, we will get started. Now, let me just do. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the last session of the day. I'm excited for that. We made it through another day. We had to improvise, adapt, and overcome. But we have done it, and I'm grateful for that. We really thought another program was going to work out, which was really kind of a catalyst for all of this. But, as tech would have, can't even blame Mercury right now. It's just what is happening. And so I'm just grateful that we get to be in this moment. And yeah, and that we made it through the heavy lifting. As I mentioned earlier, we probably are going to end up changing a couple of things around because we had all these snafus. And so some of the recordings, getting them to shift and getting them uploaded and on time now, the schedule has gotten thrown off a little bit. And so I'm rethinking like how we make this offer available to folks so that these beautiful stories and pieces of work that we've had don't get lost in the sauce. So just stay tuned to your emails, and hopefully the next few days we'll have that ironed out. And yeah, that's c'est la vie, right? It's what happens. And so we learn, we live and we learn. Anyway, today with my session, what we are going to focus on is is asking for what you want and changing our space so that we are able, our mental space, our energy, developing some boundaries that we're able to ask for what we want. And so what I usually start with when I start talking about asking for what we want is really identifying what gets in the way of asking for what we want. And so I want to start with that. I want to start by opening the conversation up to, and this can be done in chat, it can be done by raising your hand and coming on and having your voice present. It's however you want. You can also just be thinking about these things and writing them down in your own journal. But I want us to think about some of the things that get in the way of us asking for what we want from our lovers, from our friends, from our communities. Um, yeah, what gets in the way of asking for what we want? And I want to be really clear on like what I mean by that. Because a lot of people think they asked for what they want and they didn't. And so when we start doing this exercise, especially if I'm doing this with a client, like, no, 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 no. I ask for what I want all the time. I'm always asking. I'm almost a burden, right? And we kind of have this idea that we're asking all the time for what we want. But when you ask for what you want, it actually has a particular song to it, right? And that song is typically May I or Will You, which is why we had Jack kind of open up and lead with just some basic will of consent stuff. Because in order for me to ask for what I want, either I'm asking for you to give it to me or I'm asking for me to give it to you, right? What I want. I want to do something to you or I want you to give me something, right? I want to take something from you. I'm asking for what I want because I want to receive that thing or I want to be in action. I want to do a thing. Either way, when I'm asking for what I want. And the question usually is being framed by that. And I've played around with this and thought of other things. And I'm like, well, I don't have anything else. I want to ask you before we even move any further so we can have a baseline. Oh, you know what? Hold on. Before we do that part. So it's so much easier when I'm doing it myself. And I forgot to tell my volunteer to come into class. So there we go. It's been one of those days. Not one of those rough days. I actually just was taking naps. So it's actually been a very easy day. But anyway, so I want us to start with just like kind of an idea of like if there's another way that you think that getting what you want through request can happen, and it doesn't sound like may I take this thing from you or get this thing from you or do this thing to you? Will you give me this thing? Right? Not may I take, sorry. Will you give me this thing or may I do this thing? If it looks like something outside of that framework for you, let me know. Let me know in the chat or raise your hand. But I've thought about this for a while. And because when I first was introduced to the Will of Consent, which is the piece that Jax did from Betty Martin, that is what I was looking at, right? And so I'm not sure if all of you were here for the will of consent. So let me just make sure that we're all on the same page for that, just so that we know what we're talking about here. But if you think, what other way do you ask for a thing that you desire? Um, and it's not may I or will you? What does it sound like? Yeah, like may I? Yeah. So outside of may I or will you, what other ways? Is there another way? I'm telling you, I've racked my brain. I don't think of any. I've tried. I know how to tell you what to do. When I ask for what I want, it's usually going to show up in one of those two ways, right? And so I'm curious if you have another way that you know that I don't know about. And if so, share that. Otherwise, we're going to go with the premise that in order for me to make a request, in order for me to get what I want in life, I'm probably going to have to use that language if I'm making a request. Will you or may I as the baseline? Now I know people say can you, my mom would correct you on can you or can I, because that speaks to capacity and not desire. But that is a way, right? We could say can you or can I do this thing? But my mother, I'm just telling you, Miss Vickers will correct you in a minute. She would be like that, oh, I don't know, can you? That's what I would hear growing up. And so can you was not allowed in our household. May I was how we were instructed to speak at home.
Only,
And
oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
The only go around, like, I don't think there's actually a go around, but I think that you can say a statement of what it is. And then, so would you like to join me in this? Or would you like to do this to me? But I don't think you can get out of saying it altogether. Like I would
Yes.
like my ass rubbed, right? Like I want a booty rub. Would you like to join me in this endeavor? Would you like to share in this experience with me?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a workaround, right? But it's not, it is complementing, I believe, a way of living that doesn't allow you to be direct, right? Like it's not just that I want my ass rubbed. I actually want you to rub my ass. Will you do it? Is the question that I really want the answer to. And so it gives you more of an empowered voice. It moves you more from an empowered space. But the passive way to ask for that, yes, is the workaround of like, oh, I want to eat some cake. Will you get me a piece? Well, you still have to say, will you? There's still no getting around that. Like you can express desire first, but will you join me in eating cake does not actually typically lead to getting a need met. It's like, well, who's going to get the cake? All right, we haven't decided. Will I join you in getting your butt rubbed? Yeah, who's rubbing it? Who do you want to rub it?
You, Amina, you didn't catch that piece?
Right, right, right,
You get to rub
exactly.
my ass. You're welcome.
Exactly. So that's what we end up doing, right? We kind of like nip at it and get around it. And so if we're looking at the language of may I will you being kind of the premise, and I'm just going to share this will right quick with you so you can see. And we're not going to hang out for a lot in the will, but I just want you to understand in case you haven't seen it, that when we're looking at like literally, may I will you being that we want to receive something. Either we want to receive a service, an act, right? Or we want to receive something, we want to do something, and we want to receive the person that's allowing us to do the booty rub. May I rub your booty? In that language. So, right. So we're just looking at the right side, like that, may I, will you? Can I ask you for what I want? And just to have that as a frame of reference, right? I'll leave this up in case you don't have it, so you can take a screenshot if you need to. Let's see if I can play it. So I'm not that video box. All right, so oh, that's from my class. That's why we don't want to have me talking in the background. So we look at it through that lens. We have that as our idea of like, this is how we ask for what we want. So now I just want to know, well, what stops you? What puts you in the space where you say, oh, I would like my booty rubbed, as opposed to saying, will you rub my ass right now? Right? What stops you from doing that? And any other way that you would ask, what stops you from asking for that very specific thing that you want? And again, you can share this in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and give me your reasons right here.
Peace, y'all. I'll unmute myself to say that probably the fear of rejection stops folks from being most direct.
Mm-hmm.
The roundabout way feels easier. The
Mm-hmm.
long way to get to know sometimes.
The long way to rejection. Yeah. The slow
Uh-huh.
burnout road to rejection. Somebody
Yeah,
put that in the chat too. Yeah. Rejection
yeah.
or hearing a no. And that's, I think, really important. The conversation around like, do we have the fortitude to receive a no? Does no break us? Does no level us? Um, and if so, how do we strengthen that? How do we build the resilience? And a lot of times people talk about resilience in a way where it's like, I hear one of the things I hate to hear. I'm going to go ahead and say the part out loud that nobody wants me to say. But one of the things I hate to hear is when I hear somebody say, "I'm tired of being resilient." And I'm like, I get what you're getting at. I do. I get what you're getting at. This idea that I'm tired of always having to be resilient against harm perpetuated against me. But that's not the only way that we get to be resilient. We also experience resilience in our ability to actually rebound or return to our center, the ability to receive rejection, for example, and not let ourselves unravel from the rejection. And so when I hear somebody in this conversation, particularly say fear of rejection, my next thought, my curiosity is, what happens if someone rejects you? What becomes of you as a human when you receive rejection? Because I think that's where the tending to gets to take place. And that's where we start to build up ourselves so that we can ask for what we want. So if you can think of things that might happen, because a lot of times we have this fear of something, but we don't even know what is really going to happen because we just avoid rejection our whole life. So we've actually not really had much of it. I always say people don't hear no enough. As a society, we do not hear no as enough. I want to hear no more personally. I want to hear no more. I do not hear no enough. I hear maybe, I hear yes, and then I hear excuses a lot, but I don't hear no enough. And so I'm curious for you, when you think about rejection as something that like, oh, I might not say no because I don't want to hear, I don't want to feel rejection. Sorry, I don't want to, I have a fear of rejection or a fear of actually hearing the no. Then what becomes of you in that space? And that's a challenge that I find myself up against often with fear in general. Like if I'm afraid of something, I used to have a debilitating fear of spiders, and Costa Rica broke my ass from that because you're not gonna live in the jungle and maintain a fear of spiders. You'll be institutionalized. They will have no choice because they run the country. And so I had to educate myself on spiders and start thinking about like, well, what happens to me if this particular spider bites me? What happens? Do I die from this one? No, not that one. Not that one either. So there's actually no spiders around here that are gonna kill me. They're just gonna give me the heebie-jeebies. Okay, so I don't have to kill them all. I don't have to kill every spider I see because now I realize that this fear that I have, I've actually had a conversation with it. And so I just want to invite that. Um, Anticipating a no is a real ass thing, absolutely. And that will get in our way for sure. Not wanting to come across as needy or demanding. Yes, that's one, right? Not wanting to come across as needy or demanding is really a chunk of it. And I say this all the time. We're humans. We are the most neediest fucking creatures on the planet. Like we are so needy. From the time we come out the womb, we attached to mama for like 2 years. Can't do nothing. Nothing. We would die of in our own feces of starvation. Like we are so needy. Humans are so needy. And then we just don't want anybody to know that we're that needy. It's so funny that we do that to ourselves, right? I have no defense system. My defense system is other people. Please, everybody surround me. So if they start throwing darts at us, that we don't all die, like somebody's gonna take some hits. But we have no armor. We have no chest plates. We have nothing protecting our organs. We have a hard time fending for food on our own. It's getting worse. We cannot survive the elements. We are the most neediest fucking animals on the planet. We don't even know how to build shelter. Like we're so needy. And then we don't want to come across as needy. It's like something about denying our own humanity, our humanness is alive and interrupting our asking for what we want. And I want us to think about that, like how that looks for us is how that's working out for us. Are we getting our needs met? Trying not to be needy? Or are we actually living in a state of constant suffering, hoping needs get met, ending up in spaces where needs occasionally get met just by happenstance, the whole broke clock twice a day thing? Or are we actually actively able to make a request of what we want? And so that's something to think about when we look at like what are these reasons? What are these things that get in the way? What stops us from asking for what we want? The other one is and thank you for naming both of these, Jasmine, not wanting to come across as needy or demanding, right? So that means now I'm managing the other person. Because if I make a request, you get to say yes or no. That's scary, right? It says you get to say yes or no. But if I assume that you're just going to say yes to me, then that's where the demand is. I don't have my, or if I don't want to hear no, if I'm like, please don't tell me no to this, I'm not, now this feels like a demand. Because if there's truly a request that I'm making, there's so much space for yes and no to be alive that I can't be demanding. I could ask a million times. And I mean, and I may annoy you. I'm not gonna lie, I've been annoyed. Has anybody been to raise your hand if you've been annoyed by somebody who is just like, damn, you're gonna ask for everything in this mug, ain't you? I've been annoyed. And you know what? I survived. Nothing, no one died. The friendship didn't fall apart. It was just that person has no fear in asking for what they want. from certain people. It feels good for them. It feels safe. And so but there was no demand made. It was just me navigating my own shit about wanting to people please, wanting to say yes, and then having to deal with like, well, why are you gonna keep asking? I don't want to keep saying yes. And then I got to come up against my own shit, right? And so that's what sometimes is in the way of us asking too. Like we see ourselves in the request, our own response in the request. And so we get that. I'm curious, what else? What are some other things that get in the way that stop you from asking for what you want?
Hello.
Hello.
For me, like for instance, it used to be for sex. Like in the past, when I would ask, I have no problem with being told no, but there was a particular previous partner I had who told me I was too sexual because I
Mm,
was comfortable asking. And I don't think he was used to women, I guess, comfortably asking. Like if it's on my mind, some get to
yeah,
some, if you get to throbbing, get a little heartbeat down there, I'm gonna say something.
that's a heartbeat. Yes.
Not yeah, a little heartbeat,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So sometimes it's that unpacking that statement of not wanting to be considered too sexual, but then you get to a point and you're like, well, what exactly is too sexual?
Right.
So
Right.
that's one of my things. Feeling, I guess, the shame.
Yeah.
That's something that stops me sometimes from asking for what I want, being shamed for
Right.
asking.
Yeah, and that's a very real example, right? Like that's an example of like an active memory of being shamed and how that shows up in stopping us from asking for what we want. And also just that too muchedness. Maybe it's too much sexy, but maybe it's too much something else. You're just always too much. And whatever the thing is that you're asking for, you're always too much. And so you start to make yourself small so that you don't show up as too much. You start not asking because you don't want to show up as too much. You don't want people to not have enough space for you to exist. So you just small yourself down so that you can be in the spaces that you've decided you're going to be in. And so both of those are things to look at. The one of the things I would say about the part with the shame, and particularly the erotic shame, the piece that you brought in is I remember when Bag Lady first came out, and I remember how many variations of understanding that was, right? Like what were in the bags. Yeah. And this shame is one of the things that we carry along in the bags, and we may carry that from relationship to relationship. We may not even realize because we've gotten so used to holding that bag. We might not even realize that we're still carrying it. We just walk into the next bedroom, we walk into the next sex party, we walk into the next even personal masturbation session with this idea that our shame is the shame of what we want is not to be told. No one should know how much we want. No one should know how much we desire. So we're gonna, because somebody did that one time, we're gonna keep that bag with us the whole time. We're gonna carry that bag. And so a lot of unpacking, like whose voice is this? Whose story is this that I'm carrying with me to my next location? Whose story is this that I'm carrying with me into the pleasure spaces that I live in? Because that story might not be yours. And so I'm always looking for like, where is this voice though? Where does it come from? I think it's really great that you have a particular person that you can point out, that's that person's voice. I don't need to carry it. It makes it a little easier to unpack. But sometimes we have these voices that have just been coming at us our whole lives from all these different areas. And it's really hard to come into the spaces that we want to be in and find ourselves like freely there without the baggage. So it's something to also just be conscious of that, like that you need to be smaller. And especially I feel like I don't feel like there is a mission in the world of humbling Black women and creating an environment that reminds us that we should actually be a little more humble. And so making ourselves small becomes a societal demand. And to buck up against that, to be like, no, I don't want to actually make myself small. I want to be here and take up some space. I'm going to actually take up more space than I may even be authorized to take up. Fuck it, let's see what happens. That takes some work and some practice, right? To be able to really step in and ask for what you want in that way. So yeah, little practices, little things to be aware of. There's a specific example of what I was thinking, but that is that what the request says about you. Yes. Thank you, Kadera, for naming that, for bringing that into the space. This idea that like, oh, me asking for something is going to inform someone possibly about me, or what story someone else might create about me based on the request that I have. Right, which is what we're hearing a lot of, right? Like, I'm too slutty, I'm too sexy, I'm too needy. These are all stories that we don't really know if anybody, because who said it to your face? Ain't nobody said this shit to your face, right? I mean, not the you're too sexy part. We just had an example, but most times they're not actually going to say it to your face. So it's a story that a lot of times we're crafting up inside, and we're prepared. We're anticipating the storytelling, which is a beautiful reflection, right? A moment of reflection where we get to say, oh, sometimes I tell these stories about myself, about others, and now I'm looking in this mirror. But it's also, it's also an opportunity to get out of other people's business. And I always say, when somebody is faking what somebody thinks about me, none of my business. What somebody assumes about me, none of my business. What somebody feels about me, none of my business. What they want to talk to me about, though, I'm here for that. So fear, okay, Lani comes in with fear of rejection, or more specifically, that they would rather have that with someone else. Yeah, so that's like a little bit different, right? Like, I feel like that's that now you're reaching into um uh anticipated jealousy, possibly a little bit of that, right? Like, what if I don't get it? Or envy, right? That somebody else, like, I know you want this, but it might not be with me. And what if that happens? Yeah, beautiful. That's another thing, another thing that gets in the way of us asking for what we want. What else? What else gets in the way? Again, I'm going to say that one still falls under that, like, ooh, how do I work on not managing someone else's feelings? Because desire is still theirs. And so now I'm worried about managing that. And now I don't get my needs met because of that, because I'm managing and I don't even get to ask for it. So yeah, that's a beautiful acknowledgement. Thank you for that. Yeah, not feeling like you deserve that what you desire or need. That's a big one, right? Especially back in that humbling, like, oh, who the fuck you think you are, right? That is always alive in the ethers. And so, like, really having this idea of like, why do I think I should have that? Why, right? Like, that kind of like self-humbling and self-belittling. Like, I haven't even done anything. I haven't even done the work for this. I shouldn't be able to get this. I'm not even in a committed relationship with you. I shouldn't be asking you to eat my ass. Right? All these stories that we tell ourselves, like, we don't deserve this because I'm not gonna be monogamous with you. And so I don't need you to, right? All these things we actually end up getting in our own way. A lot of times we actually end up blocking our own ask through the story that we've written about ourselves. I don't need it. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve this desire. Also, I will name another part of that comes up, and and now you're gonna make me lose my train of thought. Another thing that comes up with that is survivor's guilt, right? So folks that have gotten out of spaces and they're looking back at where they've come from and who they left behind, and realizing like, oh, those people don't have access to this. I shouldn't have. I come from that. I shouldn't be asking for this. I don't want nobody to see me asking for this. Like, I came from that same background. Things like that also can show up in that. And I agree. Monogamy has nothing to do with getting your ass ate. I'll just use that as an example. 100%. All right. So we have a few things, and I know there's some more things brewing in your heads and minds. You can continue to like iron them out in the chat, but I want you to start with that, like this idea of like, oh, well, why am I not asking for what I want? And what happens then to my desire? And that's what I'm most curious about. Where does your desire go to die after you've snuffed it, right? You say, oh, I'm not going to ask for that. I ain't got no business asking for that thing. I done tucked it down. Well, where does the desire go? Hold on one second. And so as we look at through the lens of like, okay, so then what happens? So then what happens? Where does your desire go? And I want you to just spend a couple minutes thinking about that moment, that last moment that you had, that last request that you wanted to make, that you talked yourself out of, and you did not make the request. And what happened to that desire? Where did it go? It doesn't die, it lies dormant until the yes. Where does the yes come from if you don't ask for it, right? Yeah, it doesn't die, it lies dormant. So then do I ask somebody that I think is less deserving? Because that happens sometimes, right? I go get it from somewhere else. I go tell somebody else, like, I knew that person wasn't gonna do it, but you kind of my yes man, you'll do it. You're not the one I want to do it with, but I know you'll do it. So you come over, get this done, right? It keeps eating at me until it makes me depressed. Yeah, so that sounds scary. That sounds like worse than rejection, huh? Like I feel like if I'm like depression for me feels worse than depression. I don't know. I think that might be somewhat of a universal feeling, but I might just be well in my head. Like for me, it sounds like the worst thing is to be like I've navigated severe depression and that doesn't feel, yeah, I'd rather just have a little bit of rejection for the afternoon. Thank you very much. Not 3 months of severe depression, right? Not the good kind of eat. Right now, what we were talking about earlier. It gets, yeah, the desire gets shut down. That happens, right? And then so we actually sometimes can turn that, like a desire as a fire, as a gas line that's coming in, and you can kind of turn it down so low that there's almost no heat there. There's nothing to ask for anymore. I just get out of the place of needing anything, of wanting anything, and just really turn my desire all the way down. I shut it down as low as it can get so I can get through the day. Yeah. Yeah, what else happens when you snuff that, when you decide I'm not gonna ask for what I want. I'm not gonna ask for, and it doesn't have to be erotic, it could be in any part of your life. Where is something that you wanted to ask and you didn't, and then what happened? Oh, where's my do it myself first? Yeah, where are y'all? I was gonna ask you to come help me, but I just do it myself. Hi, my name is Amina, and I am a do-it-myselfer. Right? I'll do it myself. I asked you to do this. I told you I needed some help. I was gonna ask, and I decided I don't want to ask no more. I got tired of asking people for help, so now I'm gonna do it myself. Right? Yeah, that one happens sometimes. Um, Jasmine says, wait, hold on, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I end up stewing on it for too long and then cussing myself out in the journal. Yeah, that rumination happens over and over again. Yep. Gia, go ahead. I see you raise your hand.
I was just saying I'm gonna do it myself. Do
Oh, you're doing it yourself. But yeah.
everything myself.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the things that like I think for many people, for many of us without thinking, like we're looking at that list of things that stop us from asking for what it's I've actually felt I don't get help. I've asked a few times and no one showed up. So I just stopped asking and I just started doing it myself, right? I just started fixing it. I started taking care of things myself. I went and got me, a turbo fuck machine and now I just bend over and get it myself. I can get every itch scratched with a little bit of financing. So I'll do it myself. Never mind. Right. Um, I only got a handful of asking then the Virgo in me is like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it myself. Yeah. Yeah. I was looking for that one because that's a big one. I think that one occupies a lot. It's not the one that we want to say out loud oftentimes, which is why I didn't come up in the room. But it's a big one. It's this like, I've asked a couple times and that's enough. I don't want to hear no anymore, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and knock this one out myself. I got it. And so, but then what happens? And that's always like, I see that a lot, but then it gets really heavy. Life gets really heavy to bear when we're doing it all ourselves. When now it's I've asked so much it felt like begging. Yeah, there was resentment, there's the anger. Yeah, right. It's like the frustration, the heartache of like now I feel the victimhood, like nobody ever fucking helps me. Right? I'm not gonna say I've ever done that. Like just like in that space of just like, why am I so alone here in this world? Right? Instead of looking around and maybe reevaluating some things. So we're going to talk about that reevaluation and like looking around and seeing what the spaces that we're in looks like. So if you know, and some of you have already set through some of my boundaries practices, and so we're going to just do a little bit. I'm going to introduce you to the boundaries exercise that we do. It's in the book Authentic Consent. It's in the coursework, but it's also it's a part of our practice. And that's like, do I know where I'm supposed to be asking? So, yesterday we did the spheres of influence or the spheres of belonging, where we looked at like the spaces in which we belong, right? And one of the things, and I'm gonna see if I think I can pull it back up from yesterday. One can dream, right? Let's see, existing whiteboards. Yeah, yeah, it's here. All right. There we go. How to make that bigger? Make it bigger. Bigger. All right. So y'all can see that? Yeah. So we talked about this yesterday, and I know some of you might not have been there, but we talked about like these fears of belonging. And this is from Joseph Myers in The Search to Belong. And so we look at these spheres of belonging and we like, oh, okay, where am I spending all my time at, right? And then who's in these circles, right? Like who is in these circles? And one of the things somebody said yesterday was, oh, woo, I realized I got a lot of people in that intimacy circle that probably should not be there, right? And this is root cause of trust issues 101, all right? And it's gonna look like this. It's gonna look like this. I look over here and we got the public sphere, which is like the general where we show up. We got the social, which is a little bit larger, but more, I got some friends, some colleagues, that kind of stuff. Then I got my personal, which is like my close friends. And then I got my intimacy space. This is not sexual, erotic intimacy. This is all the forms of intimacy. So for me, my baby sister is in the intimacy circle. My bestie is in the intimacy circle. My lovers, some of my lovers are in, some of my lovers way over here, okay? I'm not gonna lie. Some of my lovers way over here in the public sphere, and I see them when I see them, no biggie. Some of them though are in that intimacy. Like a lot of times we think sex is intimacy, and it can be quite intimate. But what we're thinking about here in intimacy is like this level of closeness, yeah. Yeah. So when I look at that, then I'm like, oh, I got these people over here because I gave them some booty, but they actually aren't people that I really have this closeness with. They aren't people that I really have that level of connection with. And so if I'm asking in these circles, and I got my big sister is over here in this circle, and she don't really need to be in this circle. I put her in this circle because we got the same bloodline, but we're really not that close. You know what I'm saying? Like we're really not that close. We really don't do that much for each other. We're gonna be at each other's funerals. I'm pretty sure of that. But outside of that, we don't have a whole lot going on. I got a lot of siblings though, so I don't, no harm, no foul. Can't win them all, right? But if I have that sister in my intimacy circle, and I'm asking in that circle only, because this is where I spend most of my time. And I'm hearing no's over here. It changes my level of trust in the world, and it changes my ability to be in relationship with the world, right? And so this is a version. This is not the version that I teach in the class. We're going to look at that one differently in a little bit. But I just want you to think about that. Like, if I have these people in here, and I say these are my close friends, not my besties, but these are close personal friends. These are my cousins, that it's that kind of thing. Well, but I'm asking over here, these are not the people that really support me in that way. And so I'm starting to really start to examine like, well, who's in what circle and where am I spending all my time? Some people are spending all their time in the public circle, or they have no real intimacy. So they're spending all their time in the personal or the social circle. One of those spaces they spend like 70, 80% of their time. And that's where their requests at. Well, then people don't really know you like that. They might not even like you like that, but that's where you're spending all of your time. And so when you ask in those spaces, it does not feel safe and it will actually amplify any experience that you have of asking for what you want. You stop asking for what you want because people aren't going to give it to you. These people are not the people that you feel as close to, that you feel safety with when you're with them. And I want to pause there because there's a whole lot of words. And I just want to see how that's landing for everybody, what's showing up, what's coming up, what your thoughts are before we move on to like the meat. That's just the seasoning, okay? How we doing? Not good? You got questions on that? No? All
I
right.
noticed something. I've done this diagram thing, I think,
Mhm.
with you a few times at this point.
Probably.
And so I've done it a few times on my own as well. And I realized that over time the things change. I feel like you should write it in pencil situation or add the
Mhm.
names in pencil because like people be sorting themselves like, through um behavior and or whatever, just life, in different places. And so like some of the people who were in my most intimate circle like now feel like some of them aren't, and some people are surprisingly more intimate than I would think that they would be. Like some
Mhm.
people come like, like move through the layers pretty quickly, like in or out. And it's interesting to notice like how that can be a thing, but revisiting that is the thing that I mostly, yeah, people do
Yeah.
get demoted and promoted at any time, Lainey.
Right?
But yeah,
Yeah.
I always say that people sort themselves accordingly.
People will, because that's what boundaries are. And that is a beautiful, you could teach the class now, you've done it enough. That's the beauty of it, right? Is that people will move throughout the circles as they see fit. Now, those circles are just the circles that I introduced the premise through, because that's like just trying to understanding like how we show up and really how we hide ourselves in what spaces. But what I really like to use is my version of these circles. And I'm just going to share that somewhere here. There we go. And for my Atlanta folks, we got the ITP, we got the OTP, right? So if I look at this, now this looks a little bit different, yeah? So this is if you think about this as your ethos of relationship, right? So in this ITP, this is my closest. And you can do these for all kind of things. You can do these for work, for kink. You can do these for your polyamorous dynamics. You can do them for everything. But I just, in general, in life, I have this general one that I use, right? I think we should all start with that if that's available. So let me introduce you for those of you that haven't seen this before. In the ITP model, you have this section of the space where we spend most of our time. This is where we are the safest. This is where our standards are lived up to. Oh, that's a big one right there, that word standards. We're going to jump into that in a moment. This is where I know that I'm safe to ask for what I want. I'm safe to say no. I'm safe to hear no. I'm not the threat of abandonment or like feeling rejected for me always shows up as abandonment. It may not do that for you, but that what I realize I'm navigating when I'm facing rejection is I'm navigating that abandonment wound that I have. And so I'm not facing that in this ITP. If I get told no, I don't think it's the end of the world. I really recover really easily and safely here. And if not, I have support in this space and I can talk about how hard it is for me to recover, right? That's my safe zone. So I'm spending probably in a healthy year, 70% of my time is in this space. 50 to 70% seems about right, right? But then I have this OTP, right? So out here I have a little more spaciousness. It's not as safe, but my head's not always on a swivel. I'm more, I have friends in here, but they look a little different. They have a little bit different standards that they live up to for me. And then I have this one, which is like ethers, right? That's middle Georgia, East Georgia, that's the, Savannah, all that. That's the rest of Georgia, right? We outside of Atlanta now. We outside of Atlanta metro. So look at it like that on your map of like how you develop your relationships. Now, when we look at this, what we're looking at is that these spaces are defining our boundaries, right? Like the actual circle is the boundary. People are always like, you don't honor my boundaries. You don't honor my boundaries. They didn't honor my boundaries. They didn't. Bullshit. The only person that has to honor your boundaries is you, motherfucker. Like that's it. No one else is going to honor your boundaries because boundaries are space. So who in the hell left the gate open? Right? If somebody's in a boundary with me, then they got in there somehow. They had access to me somehow. Now, this does not cover violators and transgressors and the violence. Like that's gonna happen. And like, okay, we're not talking about that. I'm talking about your relationships here, right? Like this is the relationships, and you get to decide how much space is going to be between you and the person, right? That's what I want you to think about when we're thinking about boundaries and how we ask for what we want. Because if I am always trying to get what I want out in the far out ethers, if I'm trying to get what I want, get all my needs met way lone out here in this space, then that's not going to work. I'm going to stop asking. If I'm asking all the time out here, that feels unsafe. These people are gonna move. Their boundaries are gonna start making sure that I'm not in their space, and that's gonna feel like abandonment. That's gonna feel like rejection that I fear, right? I have to start figuring out how that looks. Now, this is the tricky part, and this is what makes it easier for us to ask for what we want. Is that we have to have some standards. Remember, I mentioned that word a little bit ago. And this is the part that people struggle with, and that's the hardest. We'll revisit this. A lot of you have gone through this already with me. I can see the names in the room. So many of you know this, but for the others of you, you may not know this. And I borrow a lot of this from Day over at Your Daily Balance Game, who introduced me to this idea of standards in a way that I just really wasn't looking at it, right? So if I look at the boundary as consequence, and consequence not being a negative thing, consequence just being what it is, it's the results of actions, right? If I get up and slam the door, it's going to make a noise. The noise is the consequence of me slamming the door. It is neither positive nor negative. It simply is what it is. Will it startle someone? Sure. That doesn't make it a negative sound. It just means that it startled that person. Didn't startle me. I slammed the door. I knew the noise was coming, right? So I want us to get out of the idea of good or bad when we're thinking about consequences, because it simply is the results of actions, right? Now, boundaries are that consequence. For me, if I have an articulated boundary, like to me, I've articulated the boundary to me. I know who gets to be close to me and who doesn't get to be close to me. I know this because I have reflected on not only my needs, but what my standards are. And I have moved through this process a lot. And I continue to move through it because all of it changes. Kadera, you're right. All of it changes. My understanding, my standards, what I need and want, all of that is going to be changing and shifting. None of this is fixed. The only thing that's fixed really for me, my standards become fixed because they are actually a part of my moral kind of character. Standards define the person, right? So I'm gonna give you an example. one of the things that I see happen all the time, people are like, I want to, like, if I work with people on this, and I do this a lot with clients, what are your standards, especially folks that are trying to date? What are your standards? Like, well, I want somebody that gets the door from me and that treats me respectfully. Like, that's not a standard. That's a request. A request they can honor, and sometimes they can honor it for a little bit of time. Sometimes they'll do really good at honoring that for the first year of your relationship. Maybe the first 2 years if you're lucky. But at some point, they start to fall back into their ways because that was not a standard. That was not their ethics. That was not their character. And you saw that. You wanted them to be different for you, right? So if I say I want somebody that's really nice to me, I want them to get the door from me. Well, then I've made a rule for them and I'm calling that a standard or calling that a boundary. What I really want to witness is this is somebody that gets the door for people. And I am people. I am one of the people on the planet. But they're actually often getting the door for people. They're actually often doing kind deeds to people, for people. And that is how I get to measure a standard. Like I want somebody who exemplifies kindness, right? Then that now I have a standard. And I can dictate how that standard is measured because each of these standards need to be measurable. Now, why is this important? Because if I'm always asking something for what I want from someone who does not live up to their word or who is stingy and selfish in a way that they don't allow themselves to share with others or be kind to others, then I'm really asking in a shithole. And I'm not, it's like I'm almost creating my own disaster. I'm like co-facilitating my own disruption. Because I already know I see the person, right? I've asked them to come. They say they're gonna be here at 10, they always get here at 11:30. They don't do what they say they're going to do. I asked them if they're gonna show up at this important event and they say yeah, and then 3 days before they call and cancel. Not gonna make it. They can't honor their own yeses. And then I'm asking that person. And then I ask another person who looks just like that. And then I ask another person who looks just like that. And I'm like, well, nobody is ever saying yes to me. I'm going to stop asking. When really, there might be some space to be like, why am I asking these motherfuckers? I don't know good and goddamn well. They actually don't do what they say they're going to do. They don't help people. They're not really considerate. I just like hanging around them because they do something for me. I don't know what that something is, but that's what it is, right? So the idea is that we actually start to build out a model that says, in order to be in this innermost circle, this ITP, I have certain standards that I live up to, and I expect anybody in this circle. I don't expect, I allow people in this circle only because they live up to these standards. Now, before I pause, and I'm going to pause in a moment, I just want to say, here's the thing, because a lot of people get all testy when I get to this part. They're like, well, but I don't want to, something. Here's the thing. None of these circles are evil. None of these circles are bad. If you placed any weight on one circle more than the other, then that's on you. Because I never said ITP was better than OTP. I never said OTP was better than Middle Georgia. Although, I mean, okay, maybe in real life, OTP is a lot better than Middle Georgia, but not Savannah. I would definitely rather be in Savannah than Jonesboro. The reality is that we're talking about where you are safe at, where you're safe to make the request, where you're safe to get your needs met, where you're safe to tend to self. And that ain't always going to be in Savannah, baby. That's going to be in your personal ethos, your own ITP. And you're only going to have that once you realize you have to have standards to be in there. So sometimes I think most of us probably only have, I would say, typically under 5 people for most folks. Well-developed, structured, strong community asset resource people might get up to like maybe 10 in that ITP. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of people in there. 10 is a lot. I can't imagine what that's like. And I think I'm pretty well resourced. I ain't got 10 people in there. No, I got a lot of people on OTP. I love them. That does not mean I love them less. It just means that, as Prentice Hemphill said, boundaries are the distance at which you and I can love each other simultaneously. I can love you better out here when I don't have as many expectations of you that I have of those in here, that I know you're unable to meet because you've demonstrated that. This keeps us both safe and in right relationship with each other. It allows me to ask for what I want. And now I'm going to land and pause there and just see how this is landing for everybody. Maybe even remove my spotlight and just see if we need a little conversational such and such for that part. What's alive? What are you thinking? What are you feeling into right now? Does that make you feel different about asking for what you want, about who you get to ask? Does it change your list? Does it make you look back on requests that you've made in the last year that you wanted to make, but the wrong people were close by, and so you didn't? What shows up for you? Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, a lot of what you said definitely resonates, especially when you said like you ask somebody, attend this event or will you do this, would you speak at this event for me or, I'm having this thing. I really love to see you there. Like, are you going to be able to come? And they'll RSVP and everything. And then, like you said, the last minute or the day before, they're like, nah, I can't make it. And it's like one time you're cool with it, but then you start to notice that it's something always comes up.
Yeah.
Something comes up every time. So maybe this person aren't as close. Maybe I should not be asking this person to show up for me in this way because obviously I'm not as connected to them or they're not as connected to me as I am to them to show up in that light.
Right. And some people, I want to say this because this is really important. And what you did right now is you hit the nail on the head. That's how it goes. I'm gonna say the head on the nail. You don't hit your head on the nail. You hit your nail on the head. But what happens is sometimes people are just overcommitted, right? Sometimes they have 100 Joes that they're trying to be everything for. And so they may say, they may think that canceling a week out is still good. Like I gave you a week notice.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But you're looking at this. And what you said that was really important was that count. Because remember, I said the standards have to be measurable. And so if I look at a measurement tool, I'm going to look at I like math, right? So do you do what you say you're going to do 5 times out of 10? That's not a very high number. If you're not even making that, then I don't know what we doing. Like, well, I realize that I should not be asking you or trusting that you're going to be in integrity with me because 5 out of 10 times you be lying.
The math ain't math.
The math ain't mathing, right? So, okay, well, let's say if I go up a little higher, right? So for my ITP, I'm looking at 8 out of 10 times. At 8 out of 10 times, you are doing what you say you're going to do. Well, that feels much better. I have room and space and empathy. Some people have 9 out of 10 times. I'm like, nah, you fuck up once, that's all you get, baby. 9 out of 10 times, you got 10 more times. The next 10 times, 9 times, you become correct. That's fine. You get to decide what the measurement that you need to feel safe because these are your boundaries. But you have to at least be looking at some sort of measurement tool in order to be able to measure a standard. Is this person living up to the standard? And am I living up to the standard? Like I want everybody to come correct for me, but then I'm the flaky motherfucker. I'm only doing it, I'm not there. I said I was gonna come, but I didn't. I didn't make it. I said I was gonna be there, but I didn't manage my budget correctly. And so now I can't really go out tonight. Right? Like all these things, like then these are not our values are misaligned. What is important to me is not important to you, and that's fine. But I don't feel safe to ask for what I want in this relationship at the rate that it is. And so what ends up happening is you end up not getting your needs met because you're spending all your time around unreliable motherfuckers who cannot meet your needs. And these are motherfuckers that we love. Not motherfucker like, fuck you, motherfucker, but motherfucker like, I'm from Chicago. I say motherfucker a lot. So, but I'm spending my time around a bunch of unreliable people that I'm actually missing out on the opportunity to build strong, healthy, loving, intentional relationships with the people who have the capacity to be there. because I'm spreading myself thin. I'm spending 50% of my time in my OTP and then 20% of the time in my ITP. And that doesn't feel safe for my nervous system or my body. That doesn't feel safe for a relationship. That doesn't feel safe for making requests. I'm not getting my needs met because I'm out here in people pleasing land, really trying to please people who show them how to show up for me. I really want to show them what it looks like to show up for somebody. And then the people that are actually showing up for me, that actually have the capacity, that actually have the trust, that actually are trustworthy, I'm actually not spending my time around them. And there's a whole lot of this. We got enough therapists in the room. I can refer you out. There's enough therapists in the room to help you navigate that part. I'm just here to shine the light on it. Okay. I'm not here to do the therapy part. I'm just here to be like, okay, but there's some work to be done here, because sometimes the work is in that. Like there are moments where we're actually chasing that high we get of being let down, of being of facing, navigating the hurt and the pain of living in victim space. That might be a part of it. I'm not diagnosing you. I'm just saying we have to watch out. We have to pay attention. Like, why am I not spending more time where it's really safe to be? Why am I not spending more time where it's safe to show up? Why am I not asking these people? Sometimes I'm terrified that these people are so valuable, I don't want to ask them, because if they leave, I'm really fucked. So I'm not gonna ever ask them for anything. But those are the ones that are waiting for you to ask. Those might be the ones that are waiting for you to ask. And so you don't actually get to test your relationships. You don't actually be in relationship with the people. It's just all kind of assumed and very hopeful feeling, right? And so really thinking about what that looks like for you, and like how do you hold that? How do you pay attention to that? How do you measure that, right? Um, see in the chat we got, yep, strong 3. I feel that. Feel that for real. I got a strong 3. I done bumped it up to like 4 or 5 right now. I'm kind of like navigating 4 or 5. And largely because I've had this conversation and I've done this work with my inner circle as well. Like I'm like, yo, I'm working on this project and I'm doing this and I've crafted it like this. I took some of this from over here. And so we played with it. And so we are actually have kind of melded into 4 or 5, but that wasn't the case. I looked around one day and I was like, when I first learned about like the standards, I looked around, y'all, I looked around the room and realized there was no one, not a soul was living up to any standard. I wasn't living up to my own standards that I wanted other people to live up to. And I had a hot mess express of some sort of friendships. And I was doing it all. I was doing it all. I was carrying a big chunk of the weight, and I was in a space of like, this is heavy, and couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was unhealthy for me in a lot of ways, emotionally, but also physically, spiritually. My spiritual practices were now like, it just was chaotic. And so being able to really sit with that, and COVID really carved out a lot of space to kind of sit with that. Like, what does this look like for me? That shifted things. And so don't feel like, yeah, you're probably gonna look around and be like, "Oh, why are you over here?" Like it happens, right? But that doesn't mean that you love them any less. It is, again, this is the distance that we get to love each other profoundly at. Because if I have a lot of expectations on you and you don't meet those, now I have resentment, disappointment showing up where I want love to exist. But if I have you in a space where I know you're busy, I know you're one of those people that's all over, and I'm not actually, we don't have the depth of relationship that I might want with you, but it's not available. So then I know that, but I still love you and I get to love you in this way. I don't have to lay any demands. You need to show up for me like this. No, that's not what you have the capacity for. And that's fine. I don't have to lay down any laws. I get to use the good sense God has gave me and recognize that this is who you are and I love you. I love exactly who you are. And that shifts things a little bit. So Jasmine writes, these are things I know and have learned before, but I forget to put in practice all the time. Well, I'm glad this is a good reminder. Thank you for that. Yeah, sometimes it is the practice, right? It is the practice. Having these things clear make my decisions and accountability so much easier. I can focus better because I'm not holding folks to a standard that they can't meet, and that's okay. That's the big part, right? Like, you can't meet this, and that's okay. If I don't, though, honor that. Like, it's, one of those things is like when you eat really healthy and you want to be around friends that eat healthy, but you keep finding yourself around pizza and beer friends, and then you eating pizza and beer, so now you're actually, my grandma used to say water seeks its own level, right? And so now who's rising or falling to the level of the tide is what I ask. Because that's what happens. If I'm holding you to a standard that you can't meet, I'm not going to meet the standard either. Now no one's living in integrity. No one has any standards that they're living by, because we're just fishing. We're just fishing for love. We're grasping at love straws, and that doesn't really work. It's actually more difficult for me to put someone in my ITP. It's a special place of honor. Yeah, and I want to say to that one of the things I want you to recognize is that when you're very clear on your standards, so what I do is actually work with clients and make you write out, like, we spend sometimes months on just the standards. Sometimes it can take a year or longer on just getting clear on the standards. Once that happens, it's really easy to get an ITP, because you know who gets there. It doesn't mean a lot of people will get there. In fact, it might be fewer people, but it's not hard to get there, right? Because you have standards and you know what those standards are. So it doesn't change that, like, now, because it's actually easy to get here, it's easy for me to recognize who gets in, is what I mean by that the floodgates are open. It just means that now, because I recognize what my standards are, it's easy for me to find my people who get to be in there. And it's really easy for me to recognize who the fuck ain't supposed to be in that motherfucker too. That's the bigger one, right? Like, oh yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. My bad. You wouldn't even supposed to be this close. Like, that's cool. I wasn't supposed to spend this much time with you, right? I do this a lot with folks that are dating, because they end up in this space where, like, one of my, we talk about standards and consequences. And so consequences access, right? And so if I get to witness you in alignment with the standards that I'm holding, that I've decided, then I have these consequences. So one of the consequences for living in alignment with my standards is that I spend time on the phone with you. I'm not a big phone person. And so in some circles, you get to hang out with me on the phone a little bit more. Okay, so what does that mean? That means when I'm dating, if I've got a new boo, a new love, some new relationship energy popping off, well, the inner skank in me, the inner hoe with no standards, just wants to sit on the phone with you all night. I want to talk to you all the time. And then I get delusional and I think you're amazing. And you're not. You're not amazing. I just don't know, because I'm not witnessing you. I'm already giving you what I said I was going to give those who I felt safest around. And so now I'm talking to you on the phone all the time, and the disappointment, the letdown, y'all know, it really sucks from up there, don't it? When you get to that point where you're like, this motherfucker ain't shit. Well, you just spent all this time, you've invested so much energy that really you had said, according to your standards, that you were going to invest with the people that you love and trusted the most. And they hadn't gotten there yet, but yet they were in that space. And so it gives you a chance to also, yeah, accountability towards myself. I love Mia Birdsong writes, and the way we show up, she writes about how we are the only ones that are accountable to ourselves. We accountability partners are like, that's cute, but that's not real. You have to hold yourself accountable. That's the only way that accountability works, is that you have to hold yourself accountable. So yeah. Yeah, my inner circle is empty because it's healing. Yeah, that's one of the things, is that you'll start to realize. But when you start to develop, write down these standards, and I don't know if we really have enough time to play with standards, but I'll show you a little exercise that you can do to help develop your standards. Then it starts to kind of open up a little bit. You start to realize, oh, because now you know what to look for, right? You know what to look for. There's a reason why, like, no matter what country I go to, and I have been blessed to visit many countries, that when I go to the beach, the life preserver looks the same. They don't change the color. It's red and white. And it is so that we know what to look for when we're in waves of trouble, when we're in troubled waters. We can't try to figure out, should I grab that thing? And that thing's not stable, it doesn't float. You know exactly what the life preserver looks like. It's the same at every pool, it's the same on every cruise ship, it's the same at every port, it's the same on every beach. That's important, right? And that's how you develop your inner circle. You know what to look for because you've been very fucking clear on what it is that you need and what it is that you want in life. When you don't have that clarity, shit, the circle be filthy, y'all. And then it have to sweep everything out and it's empty. And then it'll fill back up though with filth again. And so this is to protect us. This is witchcraft. This is the OG witchcraft. It's protection ritual. The acceptance feels good in my body. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Yes. That aluminum foil, boy. It'd be sparkly though. Get balled up, right? Hit all the lights, looking like a diamond. Absolutely. Beautiful shares in the chat. Thank you all for sharing along. I'm going to show you just a little bit of exercise that you can do to take with you to start developing and ironing out what your standards are. Okay. Think. Maybe I'll just send this all to you.
Can you tell us what the what is it, ITP and OTP stand for?
Yes. I forget everybody ain't from Atlanta. Me neither. Inside the perimeter and outside the perimeter. So
okay.
When people
Clear
say they're
enough.
from Atlanta, but they be from like Conyers. I love you, Mackenzie. Like, we have these spots outside of the perimeter that are still Atlanta Metro, right? But it's not Atlanta. And so
Atlanta proper.
Atlanta proper is ITP, anything inside 285, with a couple of little exceptions like Hartsfield. But for the most part, everything's inside the perimeter. And so it's just a good reference point. Houston has it too, just the bypass. Any highway,
New York.
Chicago has it. We got the 290 in Chicago. If it starts with a 2, that's your perimeter. If you got a highway near you that starts with a 2, that's your bypass highway. It usually goes around the city according to the Eisenhower system. A little Jeopardy fact for you. So anyway, all right. One of the things I want to name is that, and this and Kelsey Blackwell writes in decolonizing the body, that for us to kind of get rid of this I am a project mentality, that I'm broken due to my history, that I'm alone, that I can't make these, I gotta fix myself, I gotta do these things. None of that is what we're doing here. We're not fixing ourselves. We're not trying to make ourselves better or good. We're not lambasting ourselves for things that we haven't done. I want to make sure that that's clear. We're not doing any of this work from a place of self-aggression. Okay. We're not doing this work. This is embodiment, not disembodiment work. We're doing this acknowledging that the ways that we have been and have needed to be have been smart and intelligent and life-saving technologies that we have discovered to make sure that we are okay. And good job. You're here, so you are okay. Life has worked out for you in a way that allows you to be here. Now, we have 4 steps. Okay. Step 1 is that you're going to identify the needs. Needs met are a consequence of boundaries honored. All right. Needs met are a consequence of boundaries honored. When my needs are met, when I'm satisfied, I can look around and I notice that, and not when I did it all, that's not a need met. But when my needs are met, when I've asked for what I wanted and had found a yes, I am happy noticing that my boundaries are being honored, that I'm honoring my boundaries, that I'm showing up in spaces where needs can be met. Okay, so that's the first thing. We're going to, first of all, identify our needs. And then we're going to define our standards. Now, this is the part where folks get it a little twisted, okay? And somehow in that space of defining our standards, and standards are how we know someone is able to be in right relationship within our boundaries. So if they're able to exist within our boundaries without harm, without without harm, without hurting us, without us experiencing harm because they're there, because they're taking up space, because we're giving them more of us than we can afford to give, because we're not being replenished, right? So we want to define our standards, and this is where everybody gets a little bit caught up. And so I want to spend a little time on standards. I want you to think about standards beyond as not as rules. I want you to think about standards, like I said, as like this is what I need to feel safe, right? This is what I need to feel safe. I want to be in spaces where people are considerate. So I want to be able to make a standard that's measurable because it has to be quantifiable. It has to be measurable. And that I experience folks' consideration of others. Right. And so what does that look like? Care, good stewards of the planet. You have to think about these things, whatever that is for you. And that part may evolve, like your definition of that, but the actual standards you may find to be more rigid and fixed than you even acknowledge. How you measure it may change over time. The lack of measurement is, though, going to lead to disappointment and needs unmet. It's going to lead to emotions that are the byproduct of needs going unmet. And so you have to really think into that. And if you want support on defining standards, and I recommend that if you're a member, you show up to our monthly coaching sessions at the Institute. They're free for members. And if not, then work with the coach on actually outlining what your standards are. Because standards and boundaries, neither one of those are rules. I don't go up to somebody and say, well, you're not living up to my standards. Because what happens? Okay, well, what's your standard now? You ain't living up to yours either. You ain't living up to your own standard, right? You might hear that. The other thing that you might hear, if somebody really wants to be around you, it's all right, I can do that. All right, you just ask. That's not a standard then, that's a request, okay? That person is not able to, that's not who they are. You're looking for character in order to define, in order to be in your standards. Now, here's the thing, I talked about the consequence part. But that's the biggest deal. It's like, what does the consequence look like for people that meet the standards that I have? And that's really the big chunk. It's like, am I establishing consequences, right? Like if you do what you say 8 out of 10 times, you have an 80% integrity ratio. Great. All right. 80% of the time you live your life within integrity. You're human. You make some mistakes. You overcommit. You forget some shit. But all in all, most of the times you're doing what you said you were going to do. You're caring for those who are within your care in a way that shows that you are vested in humans. And that's important to me to feel safe. If that's who you are, you show up like that, right? That's one of my standards in the standard column. Consequence. I may travel with you. I may go on travel dates with you. You may be in my travel circle. Yeah, I answer the phone when you call. I attend your special events, your big life events. I attend those. Those are important to me. Your graduations, your family, your close loved ones' funerals, your weddings, your things like that. I'm there for those moments. I can't listen, I know. Let's just say I only know 1,000 people. That's not true. I know more than 1,000 people. I have to decide at some point who is going to be who is going to be on my whose funeral I go to, whose weddings I go to. I get a lot of wedding invitations all the time. I get a lot of calls to go and support and watch this event and be at this play and go to this baseball game. My kids are graduating and we have this. I can't, if I start doing all that, I'm going to be out of integrity. If I show up to all of those things that are being asked of me, I either am out of integrity with myself, meaning that I've eaten up all my own care ritual space. I don't have time for that. That's not going to happen. Um, or I'm out of integrity with someone else because I'm tired, because I'm burnt out. I can't go to your thing. I know I said I was going to go, but I'm not going to make it next weekend, right? That's what ends up happening. The person with that super full calendar, I don't feel safe in relationship with that person. You might. I'm not saying you should change your shit, but for me, that's one of the things I'm looking for. Like, how do you manage your own self-care? These are things that are standards that I have. This person has a good relationship with self-care and rest, right? Then I start putting those consequences. And so what happens is I can always, 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 always look to some moment where I think that somebody has me fucked up and realize that person is in a spot that they're getting a consequence, they're in consequences of actions they don't partake in, right? I'm on a trip and this woman is tripping. We done took a vacation. We done got all the way across the globe and you are bugging the fuck out. And then I look back and I'll be like, what? I mean, really, Amina? Because you're not supposed to be traveling. You got excited about the trip. You didn't actually go back through your own standards and remember that you are only traveling with people that you feel safe to travel with. And you have a deciding factor of what that looks like. And now you done got out here in the middle of this country and this person is tripping and you are now managing the safety of yourself, the safety of them. They're incapable. That's not the agreement. You thought you were going to be on vacation. What the fuck just happened? Right? Every single time. The more and more I work on this, every single time I realize, woo-hoo, every time some shit be popping off, I'd be like, woo, you know what you did? Look around, man. You're in the wrong spot. You're in the wrong spot, wrong time. You did what you said you weren't going to do. And you're out of integrity with yourself in this moment. And so that is like when I start looking at things like that, I need to be able to align my consequences with my boundaries. I need to align my consequences with my standards. I mean, so that I understand what the boundaries are. This is how, when we look at like how we're going to ask for what we want, it's because I know the spaces that I'm in. I know what rejection is going to look like. When I go back up and I look at all of those things that we came up with, the having to do it yourself, the asking and people saying no, hearing no too much, being too much, I don't have to worry about that in these spaces. I get to show up fully. I get to take up more space. They're all inviting me to take up more space, Amina, in this circle. Maybe even in this circle. We get to see, we get to define. But we have to carve out, we have to start managing our own shit in order to truly be able to ask for what we want, in order to truly be able to find our desire, in order to feel free and liberated in the request, right? Yeah, Gia got to take more responsibility for Gia. Because it's really easy to just be like, woe is me and everybody else is fucked up. It it is easier. It really feels better for me to blame it on everybody else. I don't know about you. The more people I can point to as the root of the problem, the better I feel. It doesn't necessarily fix anything. And it doesn't mean that I don't experience the bullshit all over again. But it sure does feel nice in the moment when I can be like, this is your fault. You did this. And it's not, I'm not looking in the mirror. That does feel better. It's not responsible. It's not adulthood. And it doesn't make my life easier. It doesn't make my pleasure more accessible. It doesn't create space where I get to ask for what I want. And so when I think about what that looks like, I have to know first and foremost, where do I get to ask? And if we don't know that, then we get to work on that. And so I invite you to spend some time first spending time with standards and realize, remember that it can take you a year to really clearly outline what your standards are. Do not feel like they have to come up right now. You got to be rushed to it. Take your time, figure it out, get some support, ask some friends. If they start to sound like rules, here's the thing you can know about a standard. If it's about you, it's not a standard, right? He talks nice to me. No, 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 no. They're nice. They speak with respect. They don't raise their voice to people. Not me. Because that's who they are. They're gonna change. Everybody does it for you when they want some booty, when they want a relationship. They all do what they think they're supposed to do. How do you move in the world? These are standards, not how you act when you're with me. Because that's gonna fade. First time you're faced with hardship, it's gonna fade. And so you gotta remember these things, okay? All right, we got a couple minutes left. I'll leave these last few minutes for questions, feedback, thoughts, fears, curiosities, all of that.
I have one more logistical question.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd your face go?
Over here, where I don't know. I took myself off a spotlight.
Oh, that's weird because you're the only one on camera besides me.
It
So
is, yeah. I
you
am
gotta
the
stay.
I guess I'll go back on spotlight. I realize ain't
That's the
nobody.
only reason why I was like, let me stay on camera because I was like, there's literally no one for you to look at.
Yeah,
Nah,
I
but
know it sucks,
with
man.
the whiteboard,
Uh-huh.
how do we access it? It keeps telling me I need permission every time I try to access it.
Hmm. I don't know. Why do that? Hold on, let
You
me go
must
to
be talking about Amina because it's not my eyebrows. I don't have any.
the Let me see. It did tell me, it gave me a warning, and I was like, yeah, shut up. Let me go see what it says. It says cloud sharing. Click here to adjust your count setting. Oh, I had to do something to make that available. Well, I tell you what, I'll put it in the resource guide. It's asking me to do some adult stuff. So if I can't figure this out in the next 2 minutes, I'll put it in the resource guide.
Yeah, it just keeps telling me that the request was sent
Mm.
and doesn't let me actually. Maybe I'm not the only one having this issue. I don't
No,
know.
it's not you. It tells me that I have too many. And so I just looked, it said you got too much shit in your cloud. So I'll share this with you separately, and it'll be in the resource guide. So I'll make sure that all the documents that I've shared in the cloud are in the resource guide. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. And thank you. I've been doing it myself because I'm terrified of getting them done again. They finally grew back from 1997. So took
You're
a
doing what
minute.
yourself?
My eyebrows.
Oh,
Yeah. I spent a lot
no
of
one in
time
your
having
inner
my,
circle does eyebrows.
no, no one that I
No one in
trust.
the
I
perimeter.
do it myself.
That's a different circle of trust, huh?
Yeah, that's a whole different circle of trust. Um, yeah. Mm. In Hawaii, I got some people in my circle of trust, but that's a long way away. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all for coming out tonight, for hanging out with me one more night. We have more stuff popping at you tomorrow. Inas is going to be talking tomorrow in a really, really powerful session. So I look forward to hearing from you. And then we got a video montage, a bunch of brothers that are sharing their relationship with consent. That's going to be fun. And some practices that we'll explore tomorrow. So look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Everything is in the YouTube channel. We go live in YouTube. You can go onto YouTube and turn on your notifications. And if you have the app on your phone, it'll actually ding you when we're going live. So it might make it a little easier for you. We just had to get rid of the whole plan that we had, because sometimes that's just how it go. So Jazz, you should be able to see the replays in a YouTube just fine. I think almost all of them are there. This one will be there. It's live streaming on YouTube right now, so this one should be there. And then we'll see you all tomorrow. All right, have a beautiful night. Get some rest, get some twerking in, move your body, stretch, masturbate.